Tune in to Q Rock Radio, Sunday morning at 8. Marshall Biddle bringing real estate and legal advice. He's got the knowledge, he's got the insight. You won't want to miss his show. Come on, let's ignite. Real Marshall Law, he's the expert, no doubt. Navigating the tricky world, he'll show you the route. Whether it's contracts or property sales, Marshall Biddle's got the answers, he never fails. Never fails. Tune in to Q Rock Radio every Sunday at 8. Get your real estate and legal advice, don't be late. Marshall Biddle's here, he'll guide you through the maze. Law and Law with Marshall Biddle, it's a days. Days are days.
Well, here we go again. It is that time. Real Marshall Law is on the air. I'm Jack Murphy, and he's not. He is the real Marshall Biddle.
Yes, I am. Here
Howdy.
I am.
Good
Hey,
seeing
Jack.
you.
Good to see you, brother.
Yes, sir. All right. We talk a lot about real estate, but we very seldom talk about estate planning.
Right?
And those two go hand in hand.
Sure.
A lot of times.
Yes.
Should.
Yes.
Real estate's a good place to put money for investments and whatnot, but estate planning, most of us get started on that a little later in life than we probably should.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
we're going to talk about that on most of the show today. Not only is Marshall a real estate broker, but he's an attorney here, and he can definitely get you started with things like a last will and testament. We'll talk about a power of attorney and even property deeds and titles, all kinds of stuff we'll cover today.
Yep. For sure.
All right? Last will and testament.
Yep.
At what age should I have one of those?
You know, believe it or not, I don't know that it's really an age issue, but, if you have anything when you're 18 that of any consequence, you probably ought to have a will. But then again, you never know. I mean, we had wills early. Courtney and I were married young. We had children young. But, generally when you get married, that kind of is the triggering event that creates the need for estate planning and those kind of things. So, once you're young, you get married, buy a house, we got to start dealing with what happens if something happens to me, who does the property go to, and there's a couple of times. There's when you're young, you do that. Then when you either get divorced, you got to change things. Remarried, one of the spouses passes away. Then you got children from one marriage, children from a second marriage. I mean, it can get pretty complicated as you get down the road. And then you got, the older folks where their spouse has passed away, and then you got children that are dealing with. Then you've got children that have passed away in the meantime. There's a lot of variables that we can help you kind of guide through those issues.
How do pets fit into there?
Pets are personal property.
Okay.
So, for the most part, you say you will it, but I mean, you can leave your pets to somebody. I've seen some people that created trust accounts and left a pet with the money to provide for the cat's perpetual care. I mean, that's what's important to people in life.
I heard that one of Barb's aunts had done that, and we ended up with one of the dogs. Well, actually, we ended up with both of the dogs. Don't know how in the world that happened, and we
Right.
were told that there was money set aside for the care of these dogs. Never saw it.
Never saw the money?
No.
I bet you saw the dogs, didn't you?
Yeah, Barb drove and met a family member halfway from Toledo, Ohio, and anyway,
Wow.
the neighbor got one of the dogs, and we kept one of the dogs.
I got you.
But I never saw any
Do
money.
you know if she got the money, the neighbor?
No, the neighbor didn't get anything. She just acquired a dog. I didn't tell her about the trust.
Oh, right.
Dogs live next door to each other.
Yeah. And there was no money that you're aware of.
Never saw it
Never saw it. How long did you keep the dog?
till it passed away.
Okay, well, that was mighty good of you.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, the dog was all right as far as dogs go. It's a little Shih Tzu dog.
Yeah. Shih Tzus, they're interesting. Got the little face. Looks like they got hit with a shovel right in the face.
Yeah. Or they ran really hard into it.
Yeah, kind of the Lhasa Apso or the Shih Tzu.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting dogs.
Yeah.
Yappy.
Great dogs.
Yappy dogs.
Yep. But,
So-
you know, how about, because we were talking about this when Tristan was born. We actually talked to folks, and we had we had friends. We were closer to them then than now. Like we couldn't find anyone that if something would happen to both Barb and I at the same time,
Yes.
that there'd be a guardian for Tristan.
Yes.
It was tricky. We couldn't find anybody.
Yep,
Tristan's
that's a big
good
one.
kid.
Yeah. Right. Maybe not so today, but
Oh, he's
I'm
great.
just kidding. He's
Yeah,
a great kid.
He's always been great.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, that's something. Do you want to burden somebody with your children in the event of a simultaneous death? And that really becomes an issue. I mean, you know, so most people think of estate planning as if death, but it also covers things. You know, we do a large number of documents. You've got your healthcare power of attorney, a living will, a last will and testament, a durable power of attorney, or a financial power of attorney. You know, and those things cover you in the event that you don't die. If you die, the last will and testament's gonna take care of what your assets and issues are with your estate. But if you don't die and you're in a coma, that's where your healthcare power of attorney, living will come into play.
Sure.
You know, to help make choices of whether you want to be kept alive or don't want to be kept alive. And then you got the durable power of attorney that deals with your financial stuff. So let's say that all the money's in one account and you're the only one that signs on it, and you just pay all the bills and you got them coming out of there, and you can't transfer it. I don't recommend that. For the most part, people are married. They ought to be on each other's accounts. I've been through the point where people don't want to be on each other's accounts, and that puts people in different scenarios.
Really?
But if they're not on the account and something happens and they can't do their own business, then you're in a mess if you don't have a power of attorney. If you don't have a power of attorney, you got to go to the probate court, get a conservatorship and or a guardianship, pay money, pay a lawyer, get the documents done to be able to have the right to oversee their property and assets and those kind of things.
Okay, so power of attorney, even though, well, you want that. You
Yes.
want that, even though you have a husband and a wife with their business interest over here, and she's doing that, and she runs those businesses. In the event something would happen to her or to me,
That's correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you
Well,
want
then
to be
I'm
able
gonna need to do that.
For sure. So, you know, most people want to do that. And then, of course, we've got a lot of people that move in here from somewhere else. And if you're from New York, New Jersey, Maine, Connecticut, Ohio, Connecticut, doesn't matter, North Carolina.
Say Connecticut one more time.
Connecticut. Is that funny? Connecticut. There it is. You know.
I got a family in Connecticut.
Connecticut?
Yeah, Connecticut.
Okay. So you like how I say Connecticut?
I love it. Love
Yep.
it. Long time.
Anyway, so you come in, and if you're not going back where that document was prepared, then you need to change and utilize the South Carolina laws for your will, power of attorney, and those kind of things. You just don't know what's going to be allowed and provided for under the law in South Carolina. It's better to take that to a South Carolina lawyer and say, hey, look at this. Tell me if anything we need to change. And I always ask them, are you going home? Ever? No, we've sold everything. We're never moving back to Connecticut, you know. And so I say, listen, then you ought to spend the money to get new documents here in South Carolina. Now, if they've done things like revocable living trusts, those are kind of things. Well, is the trust law from where you're from in Connecticut going to change, and you're going to deal with that in South Carolina if you sell property and you buy property and you put it into the trust and those kind of things? It's just, there's a lot of things to think about when you're dealing with all of this stuff.
Yeah, you have to appoint someone to manage that trust.
Well, generally, as a
Sometimes.
revocable trust, it's you and or your spouse.
Okay.
And then upon your death, it becomes an irrevocable trust. And the heirs, if you will, are those that are the substitute or successor trustees.
Can you set up an irrevocable trust
Yes, you can.
alive?
Yeah, immediately you can say, hey, this is an irrevocable trust, and you know I can't terminate it, and somebody else is in charge of it, and they're responsible for it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that.
All right.
Depends on what it is and whether it's recommended to do that. Sometimes you do that where there's lots of money, you're dealing with divorces, and there's some settlement stuff, and you're making sure that children are taken care of by former spouses and those kind of things. There's a lot of different things associated with that.
All right. Well, if you're just joining us, shame, you're missing out on some good stuff. This is Real Martial Law. I'm Jack Murphy. Just asking some questions about estate planning with local real estate broker and attorney, Marshall Biddle. Here's one that's kind of a little interesting. Not so much on the 401k side, but life insurance policies. And,
yes.
And I've got many of them.
Right.
Okay, some would look at my life insurance and say, dude, what are you doing? You got too much. But I could show you why I purchased additional policies, but they're different beneficiaries
right.
on some of them. Does that become an issue with a will, or do the beneficiaries set up on those policies, do they still ring true regardless of what a will says?
That's correct.
Okay.
Regardless of what a will says, the beneficiaries that are designated say who it goes to. Now, if you don't put designated beneficiaries on a policy, then that policy would in fact go into your estate, and then it would pass through your will as the heirs. Again, if somebody else owns the policy, like maybe your spouse owns that policy, there's some different scenarios, but yes. So it as long as you designate beneficiaries, for the most part, the things that, when you deal with investment accounts, that's another thing. You can list beneficiaries. I always tell them, do you have beneficiaries listed on your investment accounts? Yes. And are there contingent beneficiaries for, in case you list your spouse as the 100%, and then if she predeceases or he predeceases, then it goes to the children and shared however many there are. If there's 3 children, they split it 3 ways. If there's 2 children, 2 ways, and if they have something different, or you want to change it to 50-50, 40-30, 70-80, doesn't matter. Just however you want to do it to a percentage, you can split that among the heirs or the beneficiaries, if you will. But you got your real property, you got your cash and equivalents, life insurance, stocks, bonds, those kind of things. Again, investment accounts generally are going to be tied into those stocks and bonds, and if you liquidate everything, it'll go from there. So it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, a whole bunch to think about. We're going to take a breather.
Okay.
And we'll come back, and then we'll talk about, the importance of having a Social Security card, which, for the life of me, I don't think I have one. Know the number. Marriage, birth, divorce certificates. Yeah, I've got them. I don't know where they are. And then a prenuptial agreement. How important is that? And does it mean something differently in, say, somewhere like Connecticut? More Real Martial Law coming up.
If you're buying or selling real estate and you need an attorney, contact Marshall Biddle at the Biddle Law Firm. Marshall's been involved in the purchase and sale of real estate for more than 30 years, and his family's been in the real estate development business for more than a century. In addition to being an attorney, Marshall is also a licensed real estate agent here in South Carolina. The Biddle Law Firm is located in historic downtown Conway and online at biddlelawfirm.net.
Hey, we're back with more Real Martial Law. I'm Jack Murphy, sitting in with the Real Marshall Biddle, real estate broker, and, of course, attorney at law.
Yes, sir.
I want to find out why I should have a Social Security card, because if you're just joining us, we're talking about estate planning and basically a checklist. I know my Social Security number.
Yeah.
I don't have a card.
Yeah,
I guess I could go get one.
I think you ask for a replacement or something like that. I think you can do it online now.
Really?
If any of us that were in college back in the day, that was your number. I had a stamp with my Social Security number on it. It had my name, and it had a date with a line and a subject with the line, and I would stamp it and write my, put the date and the class on it.
Wow.
Because, I turn over your blue book and write your name, your Social Security number, the date, and the class. I paid $15 for a rubber stamp, and I wasn't signing all that stuff.
Really?
Yes. Now, I don't know what that says about me, but tuck that away, I guess, and figure it out.
I could be wrong, and many times I am, but not as often as you'd think. And it seems to me that back in the 70s, there were guys who could make a hard plastic Social Security card for you in the trunk of their car. I could be wrong. It's just something in the back of my mind when I think
Yeah.
Social Security card, because it used to just be a piece of paper.
Yeah,
with a
that's what I
number
had
on
was
it.
a paper one. Now, my brother, I think they got theirs when they were infants, and theirs were metal cards.
This was a metal
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah,
But
I didn't
this guy
have a
was
metal one.
creating them
I
in
had a
parking
paper.
lot, and I went, That's,
Yeah.
this was before identity fraud was just. I just looked at that.
Yeah,
and
there
went,
was no
"That's
stealing for
odd."
that. That's it. You know. And again, Social Security number, just simply having it and seeing it. I mean, it wasn't like anybody knew. The only number I knew was I'd look on the list and there'd be 25 or 50 or however many kids were in the class. You look at your Social Security number, you look out next to it, and you know what your grade was.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't going to pull up Social Security numbers there and try to, open a credit card or, I mean, come on, who's thinking that?
No,
No,
one
nobody's thinking that, right?
credit card.
Yeah,
What
please.
was that?
Shoot, they give them to you when you show up for college.
Oh yeah, now they do. Not when we were kids.
Well, listen, I showed up. There was a girl. She was a freshman. It was my sophomore year. Was it? No, we graduated the same time, so we were in the same class. She had a Bank of America card. Might have been a CNS bank in those days. She was just a college student. $25,000 credit limit.
Wow.
And I was like, what do you use that for? She's like, nothing. I'm like, why do you even have it? I don't know. I was like, okay, that makes sense to me. But, but you think about, I mean, that's how most of those kids get in financial trouble is having credit cards. Mom and dad run out of money or the money runs out before the end of the semester and they need to go down to 5 Points and get them a burger and fries, and a little soda water.
Yeah, the
Swipe that
card's
card.
there.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Convenience. So,
Yeah, Barb's been saying we
Anyway.
got to get Tristan a credit card to build his credit up. And I've been throwing away credit card offers for 3 years now.
yeah,
So
no.
the last thing this kid needs is that.
No, definitely not.
He's got a debit card.
Yeah.
So now we got to do what everybody else does to be part of the system. We got to get him a credit card to build up his credit score.
Ah.
Huh.
Okay, so he can borrow money later in life.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so don't pay for things as you go along. Let's set you up for credit failure.
I'm like, really, does anyone really pay attention to what we do? Because we're just conditioned. We are.
Yeah, we are.
So, Social Security card, I kind of need marriage license.
You're going to, listen, when you die, it's going to be on your death certificate. So you got a birth certificate, you don't have a Social Security card then. You get the Social Security card so the government can track you and figure out how much you paid them during your lifetime. Then you're listed on the death certificate so they can reissue your Social Security card, I guess, to somebody else once you're dead.
All right.
Then, again, you got prenup agreements, birth, marriage, and divorce certificates, which is probably more like birth certificates, marriage certificates, and divorce orders. They're not really certificates.
Right, sure.
I always tell people, when we do estate planning, we've signed the wills, powers of attorney, living wills, healthcare powers of attorney, and, the whole 9 yards. I tell them, write a letter to the people that are going to be in charge of your estate. Sit down at your desk or at your kitchen table, if you have one, and think about you have died and they're walking into your house. And you need to tell them what they need to know to find your documents, to find your safe, to find where the key to the safe is, where the combination is. How will they know how to get your documents? I've seen people that created documents, put them in a safe deposit box at a bank, had money in that bank and in other banks, and didn't tell anybody about anything, and they run around trying to figure out where this stuff is. And just because you have an account there doesn't mean that they're going to tell you got a safe deposit box there. And if you have a safe deposit box and don't have the key, guess what? You ain't getting in it, or you're going to pay $50 to have them drill it out. So it's very strange, and people are like, oh, I never even considered that.
Wow.
write a letter to your children or your grandchildren or whoever and go into. I had a guy that drafted this huge giant will. He incorporated the entire probate code in the will, 243 pages, and that's what he wanted his will to be. Okay, great. So whatever. Client wants what he wants. He is what he wants. So he put it in a safe box in his house that had a key to it. Nobody knew where the key was. They sold that. We did an estate without the will because we couldn't find the original will. So in South Carolina, the presumption is if you can't find an original will,
Right.
it was destroyed and therefore is null and void. Even if you have a copy, if you don't have the original, it is what it is. So we've gone through the probate without a will, got it done, cost more fees, the whole 9 yards. They're selling the house. Everything's out of the house. They're going in and doing a walkthrough, and everything's out. They go into the closet in the master bedroom. They open the door, and they walk around, and they look in there, and they look on the back side of the door was a little nail with a tiny key on it. That was the key to the safe box where the original will was.
Ouch.
But nobody knew. If you don't tell them, how are they going to know?
Communication.
Right, absolutely.
Communication, Jack.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can have the greatest plan for estate planning and death planning and life planning, but if you don't tell somebody what you got, where it is, and how to get access to it, you might as well not have it.
Yeah, sure. So then that comes into play with passwords on accounts,
Absolutely.
bank accounts,
Yes.
social media, email accounts. How about files and photos and documents and stuff? Some people take pictures of stuff. I mean, you got to, I guess, provide access to that too.
Just like your cell phone. I don't think my wife has my code for my cell phone. I know she doesn't have my passwords. I got a variation of passwords that I use for certain things. I got probably 6 accounts that I deal with. I know the account numbers in my mind, which I know is an anomaly and crazy. I go into the bank and I just write it on the deposit slip and put money in that account for 2 or 3 different businesses and some personal stuff. And the teller looks at me with like, I got 3 heads, just because it takes them a computer to look up everything. But, I mean, you know, it is what it is. Nice to have the ability to do that. God forbid I bump my head and forget how to do that, we're in trouble. Which account, which password, and where it goes. But yeah, if you can create a list like that, now that's a good thing as long as it's secure. You provide that list to somebody, or somebody finds your list, all of a sudden everybody under the sun can get there. Power of attorney, prime example. Power of attorney gives somebody to do what you could do as if you were there personally. If they're going to use it for no good reason, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it happens. Seen it.
Yeah.
It has happened. But in reality, you need to think about it. A lot of people don't want to think about, they don't want to talk about dying. They don't want to do their last documents for the end of their life. But, you know, it's bad to die without them. It's not bad. It's not catastrophic. You can deal with it, but it's a whole lot easier and less wear and tear and turmoil on your family if you have all your documents in order.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So,
We breezed through probate relatively quickly in North Carolina when my father passed. In fact, it was so fast, and maybe I was just going into it expecting it to be like something really, really terrible,
right.
but it wasn't anything overwhelming.
Yeah. Generally, the first parent to die, everything goes to the spouse.
That's how it was set up.
It's
So,
really easy.
yeah.
It's really easy. You get it done. You're pretty much already joint stuff, handful of things to transfer over. But then when you go from the second spouse, doesn't remarry, becomes deceased, then you got to deal with children and different stuff. You absolutely have to
Yeah.
do a lot of that. It's a little more cumbersome.
Yep, that's going to be more. That's the magic word, cumbersome. Insurance policies.
Yep.
I guess you basically create a list of those documents, provide copies of the policies, or
Yeah.
at least have them somewhere where they can be accessed.
I have a form checklist that I use for my clients. I give it to them when they do an estate planning, and it's got lists of who's my lawyer, who's my insurance agent, who's my banker, here are my bank account information and that kind of stuff. Put those in a safe place, but also provide whoever's going to come in access to those safe places. It's kind of like a portfolio. If you got to bug out and you bug out and never make it back, here's how you handle everything that I've got. So it's just stuff to think about. I mean, it's mostly common sense, but it's a lot of unknown for people, and so I try to cut or shortcut that for them, if you will, by helping them with some forms and things.
All right. Well, how do people find you?
BiddleLawFirm.net.
Yep.
Marshall at BiddleLawFirm.net. If you want to ask questions about this show or on this show, you can send an email to questions@realmarshalllaw.com. You can reach and you can call us at the office, 843-903-1600. You can get us. If you don't get us, leave us a message, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
All right, we'll take a quick breather. We're going to come back and talk about titles and property deeds, maybe an advanced health care directive, and then something as simple as funeral instructions. Stay tuned. Real Martial Law continues right after this.
If you're buying or selling real estate and you need an attorney, contact Marshall Biddle at the Biddle Law Firm. Marshall's been involved in the purchase and sale of real estate for more than 30 years, and his family's been in the real estate development business for more than a century. In addition to being an attorney, Marshall is also a licensed real estate agent here in South Carolina. The Biddle Law Firm is located in historic downtown Conway and online at BiddleLawFirm.net.
Hey, we're back. All right. We've been talking about estate planning with local attorney Marshall Biddle. This is his show, Real Martial Law. Appreciate you letting me hang out with you, buddy.
Thank you,
I'm learning
Jack.
Stuff today. I'm learning.
Well, I hope that's the plan, is to let everybody get a little bit of information and be informed about what they need to do. And listen, there are plenty of estate planning lawyers that are out there. You don't need to come to me. If you got a lawyer, go see your lawyer. If you don't have a lawyer and you want to talk to me, that's fine. But don't leave your lawyer and come see me. Go deal with your lawyer. If that's your person, have at it. I just want to make sure you see somebody
Yes,
to
sir.
get it done.
Sure. Well, insurance is important, and we talked a little bit about that, like all the policies. Make
Yep.
sure that those that survive will know where those are.
Yes.
That's important. Titles and property deeds, though.
Yep.
Woo.
Yeah, it depends on how much is there. Generally, down here you got the retirees, you got, one house, some property. I mean, if it's a really sophisticated estate, then you got to have some of those things. You got somebody that owns, acreage and acreage and acreage, and there are multiple parcels. They probably already have somebody like a lawyer that's helping them keep up with all that stuff and those kind of things. Husband and wife with one house, probably not going to be that big of an issue. They probably already own it as joint tenants with right of survivorship,
Right.
which is kind of one of the tendencies that you see in the real estate industry. But there's certain things that you can do to set things up so you don't have any issues. Now, if you die without a will and you own property, and you're married, and let's just say the property's not joint tenants with right of survivorship, the issues you have is when you die, your spouse gets half and your children get half.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, your spouse has got a half interest in the property, and however many children you have a half interest in the property. So if there's 4 of them, each of them shares that one half.
Okay.
Then if you're going to want, and if they're minors, then you got other problems, because you have to set up a conservator for him because they can't sign anything until they're 18. So there's lots of things that can go sideways if you don't have a will designating to your spouse and those kind of things. But it's just better to get it done beforehand than it is to try and figure it out after the fact.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about my situation because it's really boring, but I own real estate in 2 other states outside of South Carolina.
Right.
Would I have to contact those other, I mean, after or maybe not me, but
Yeah, not you.
because I wouldn't be there.
Yeah. Let me tell you, the key to an estate planning project is when you die, you got nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry
You're
about.
in paradise talking to the Lord, and the rest of us are trying to pick up the pieces and figure it out.
But for instance, my wife, she contacts you, then you could assist her
Yes.
in getting with the real estate that's owned in other states.
Yes. Yeah. Generally, what we do is we get the spouse appointed as the personal representative from the documents
Okay.
that you have, and then once the court sets that up, then they can start dealing with those things, get the deeds and the property that's on all of the different states, create a list, an inventory, and kind of an appraisement of what the assets are: personal property, financial property, stocks, bonds, insurance policies, cars, personal belongings, doesn't matter. And then she has the authority to sign any documents necessary to dispose of or transfer the assets. You got those 2 parcels that are in other states. She would own those. She would probably transfer those to her, assuming
Right.
everything in your
Okay.
estate goes to your wife prior to your son becoming of age, or however you have that set up. So
We're going to have to talk about a couple of these items maybe the next time we get together.
okay.
Funeral instructions. Can we do it in the next 40 seconds?
Funeral instructions, yeah. I mean, just make a list, write down what you want to do. There's nothing right or wrong about how you want to do that. You just write it out. I want to be cremated. I want to be buried next to Mary, John, and Paul over in Marion County, South Carolina, and
All right.
you
Because
can do it
at
all.
my dad's funeral, there is no way he wrote any of that down. And I had nothing to do with it. Oh, my
Right.
goodness. I got there and I went, what is going on? Yeah.
Yeah, for
Crazy.
sure.
We'll talk about that some other time. Man, it's been fun. Action
Yes.
packed today with lots of
Yeah,
info.
for sure. Well, and it may be that we need to do another day with estate planning, just because it's a lot.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's count on that. We'll talk
okay.
maybe a little bit more about it next time we get together.
All right, that sounds good. Let's just do some more next week. We'll dig into a little more of the individual stuff, talk about some different sections. I mean, it's important. It's tax season. There'll be an opportunity to get
All
it
right,
done.
we're out of time. We got to go.
Okay, bye.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Real Martial Law is a paid program. The views expressed on this show are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of the ownership or management of this broadcast station.